After 51 years, he finally said, I probably should stop. Nearly 80 years old and 51 years served as the fire chief in the Wyoming Fire District. And for those of you scoring at home, yes, there is a Wyoming, Rhode Island. We will have the chief, Fred Stanley, tonight. Congratulate him on 5+ decades of public service as chief and a whole lot more service to the country and beyond. So a nice conversation this evening. How are you? Thanks for tuning in to my State of Mind. Follow up on Friday's show. Our sailor from Bristol hasn't left yet. We will update you on her leaving probably tomorrow or Wednesday. We spoke on the radio today with Donna Lange, who was our Friday guest. She's going round the world nonstop in her sailboat. Take her about 9 months. But a little test run out there Sunday, Monday, turned out to be a work session rather than a launch. So we'll update you on that. Hope everybody's good. Welcome to my State of Mind. Don't forget, you can see the show 7:30, 11:30 on MyRI TV, and now on Fox Providence at midnight. And a lot of you are tuning in, so thank you. All righty, let us go to the rundown and just check some of the things that are happening today. This is going to be a big one over the course of the week, no doubt about it. Transparency is something that Mayor Alan Fung says he wants, but I'm not so sure. Sometimes things fall into the category of be careful what you ask for. Here's the headline that the Warwick Beacon had. The council president in the city of Cranston got a copy of a letter sent from Colonel Stephen O'Donnell, kind of a Cliff's Notes, I guess, on what was contained and what will be contained in a huge, I think a couple of 100-page report from the state police. Remember when the whole Ticketgate thing happened, well, we'll explain that in a second. But when that happened, Mayor Fung, looking to, create good appearances, asked for a thorough review of his department by the state police. Again, be careful what you ask for.
The next chapter of Cranston's so-called Ticketgate comes in the form of a letter from state police to Mayor Alan Fung. What it says, we don't know, but Cranston City Council President John Lanny tells Target 12 it doesn't paint the mayor in a favorable position. State police accused Captain Stephen Antonucci of ordering the blitz of tickets. Fung wanted him fired, but Antonucci made a deal with the city to retire next year in exchange for dropping a lawsuit against Cranston. Stico says it's no secret Antonucci and the former Republican candidate for governor were once political allies.
We don't feel that the mayor has ever really made a strong statement against what happened to our constituents.
Yeah, it's not just that story, though. This state police report covers about 6 sagas at least. I think it's about 6, based on some notes I took from the Cranston Patch, which reported out on the contents of the letter. There were rumors that Mayor Fung might be trying to get a judicial order to prevent the council president from releasing the letter previewing the report. I can't confirm that, but it doesn't matter because the Cranston Patch put it out today, and by tomorrow everybody will be reading the details of the letter. And if the mayor is smart, the report, because he ought to receive it, take a couple days to digest it, debate it if he wants to, but hiding it or looking for anything to be redacted will be the end of his political career. We'll see. All right, next item. Yeah. It's nice to know you can go to the beach and know that there's no wire underneath creating a hydrogen bubble. Whatever. The full screen on this one is interesting. Hydrogen combustion. All right, sounds good to me. Eyewitness News has the story.
The blast at Salty Brine Beach gave a Connecticut woman a concussion and broke her ribs. 2 weeks later, and the DEM says they now think they know what caused the blast, an old copper wire.
Yeah, I thought it was nuts.
I agree with it, though. It sounds logical.
The DEM and the University of Rhode Island say the truth is that it's now very likely the beach blast was caused by a buildup of hydrogen gas. URI scientists say the gas came from an old corroding copper wire buried in the sand.
You could think of it as a type of rusting, if you will, of copper, which produces hydrogen.
The wire was used by the Coast Guard before it was abandoned.
All you need is hydrogen and oxygen in the right mixture. It can combust.
Still getting email from people about, is email plural? No. I'm getting emails from people, a lot on the radio side, saying that she had to be smoking. She, the woman who blew it up, the nurse from Connecticut. There's no confirmation of that, and there's no suggestion from the professor that had anything to do with it. It's inconsequential, I guess, or undeterminable, or something like that. But it's nice when you get a URI professor to come make a presentation on the most likely thing that happened there. I'm sure Governor Raimondo is relieved to know that somebody thinks they know what the heck happened there, and hopefully he can put it to bed. Now, they got to get that Connecticut woman who says she'll never come back to Rhode Island until she knows what happened, get her back here, give her some Rhode Island stuff, some Dell's lemonade, some wieners, and some beach stuff, a salty brine mug from WPRO or something, and get her back to the beach so we can close the chapter on this. That would be called marketing to the Raimondo administration. Creative marketing. Hello. You want to be a cop? So do a bunch of other people, interestingly enough. The Providence Journal, emphasis on diversity in police academy class. Yes, check this out. To become a police officer this time around, there are 32 spots available to how many applicants? So far, at press time, according to the Journal story, 1,400. Now, I must say that I'm buoyed over that kind of number of applications. Love to get Chief Clements in here to talk about it. It's kind of a cool thing. With all of the urban police controversy we've had in the last year or so, it's nice to see that there's so many people interested in being police officer, which I do believe, at its core, is a very worthy and honorable occupation. So is U.S. Senator, but they're fighting each other like crazy. The headline here has everyone all aflutter about Ted Cruz, who of course is running for the presidency. The senator from Texas kind of speaks his mind and did so again this weekend.
The majority leader looked me in the eye and looked 54 Republicans in the eye. I cannot believe he would tell a flat-out lie. And I voted based on those assurances that he made to each and every one of us. What we just saw today was an absolute demonstration that not only what he told every Republican senator, but what he told the press over and over and over again was a simple lie.
That's all about the Export-Import Bank and what Senator McConnell said he would or would not do. The details you can read about on your own, but I find it funny when guys like Orrin Hatch are suggesting that Ted Cruz and his misuse of the floor must not be tolerated. Orrin, relax. It was much worse back in John Adams' day, heaven's sake. All right. By the way, Sister Keefe is getting a post office. Yeah, check this out. Post office dedicated in honor of Sister Anne. She is, well, she's a hero. She passed away here in the last year, and she was such a humanitarian and a no-nonsense leader, no doubt about that. So over there on 820 Elmwood Avenue, they're naming the post office for her. That doesn't seem like near enough, but good start. Your state of mind is important to us. Give us a ring at 228-1886. Email stateofmind@myritv.com, and you can, of course, Facebook, post, or tweet Dan York Show. Don't forget the E. You know, it's funny, the audience continues to build here for the television show, but frankly, during the summer, the feedback is somewhat slow. So if you do have feedback for us, you're going to get on television, and you'll be a star. When we come back, not as big as the Wyoming fire chief, but, you know, a star. 51 years. Wow. So the other day I got an email from a woman who says, hey, listen, you know, with all of this controversy that goes on with public servants and, you know, whacking this politician and that public servant and criticizing, you really ought to meet somebody who's done nothing but good work for a long period of time. And by the way, he's my dad. And so I sent the email to Jess, and Jess said, you know what? We should get Chief Fred Stanley. And by the way, I've already made a mistake. It's not the Wyoming Fire Department. It's the Hope Valley, Wyoming Fire Department. Here's the headline from the Westerly Sun. Hope Valley, Wyoming Fire Chief nears retirement. So that's an old headline, because guess what? He is now formally retired, correct?
Correct. As of the 30th of June.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Are you happy to be done?
I
Based
don't
on
know.
all
I don't know as I'm happy, but under the state laws on retirement, after I went through a floor at Charlotte's Mill last July 7th, I realized then if something had happened to me, my wife would not be able to get any of my retirement money, and so I.
Tell me about that. I don't get it.
We were at a routine call. There was a sprinkler going off in the plant, and they had called me from inside. They were having trouble shutting the fire alarm panel down, and the plant is unoccupied, but it's maintained. And I threw my coat on top of my car. My helmet was a hot summer night. It was around 1 o'clock in the morning. And I went down to where the fire alarm panel was. By that time, our fire alarm man had got there and disconnected the wires, and they were searching for where the leak was. And I noticed some heavy damage in the plant, more vandalism, so I called for the Richmond police and notified my deputy I was headed back to my car. And as I started out, I noticed some more damage off to the right-hand side in 2 glass rooms. And there was no lights over in that area, so I walked over in and I went through a side door. When I did, the whole floor collapsed, and I went down about 8 to 10 feet.
Oh, man.
Lost my light, lost my radio, and it was a while before they found me. I had my cell phone in my bunkers, and I called my wife first to let her know that I felt like it was all right, and I didn't know where I was. And then I called the dispatch center and directed the firefighters in, and they got a ladder and got me out of where I was at. And then I realized, I think it's time to retire and to make sure my wife is covered under my retirement program.
So that's a fascinating story. So you called your wife before you called the fellas?
Well, I thought you'd heard it on the scanner, and I didn't want to get upset.
Because the scanner's on in the house all the time.
Yeah.
That is a doting husband, even in distress.
Yeah.
That makes up for all of the memorabilia that you've got stuffed in the house. As I read stories about you, she's not too happy about how you kind of hoard all your memorabilia over the course of time.
Oh, they were putting it up all day yesterday, my son-in-law and my wife, and I had to stay away because she had her way she wanted to put up, and they were hanging all the plaques and everything up.
Right. Well, that's a lot of time, a lot of, and people. I guess there's a Frederick Stanley scholarship fund that we'll talk about in a second, but she'd say, please don't send them any certificates or plaques or any of that. We got plenty of that in the house, huh?
Certificates are about that high,
Oh,
but we have no place to put them all.
But the pension thing is, what is the limit? You work a certain amount of time and you forfeit your pension?
No, under the pension fund, once you retire, you can put your wife on it to get part of your payment if something happens to you.
Right.
And prior to your retirement, you can't add your wife onto the program.
I see. Okay. So injured on the job would have messed that whole situation.
Right. And the thing is, if being over 65 and being almost 80 years old, under the state laws, you have to claim a disability before 65, so I'm not eligible for disability no matter what.
All right. For all those technical issues aside, you have been the chief for 51 years, but you've been a firefighter longer than that.
Yeah, I started in at age 16 in 1951.
Wow.
Then I spent 3 years in the Marine Corps, 54 to 57.
Okay. And you met your wife when you came back?
No, I met my wife when I came back from overseas.
Yeah,
we got married in 1960.
Right.
Yeah.
And she said you smelled like oats. I read the story.
Doing cabinet work and so forth. I was a cabinet maker by trade.
Well, honestly, obviously it wasn't that bad, and you've been together ever since.
Yeah.
And how big is your family?
I have a daughter and a son, and my daughter has two grandchildren. We have 2 grandchildren with her, and 2 with my son.
And she's one of your biggest advocates. She's the one who drew attention. I don't know
Yes.
how. I don't know how I missed this. You must have a tremendous amount of experience and thought and things to offer the fire industry in general, having seen it operating for all this time. Let's talk about the volunteer part for this, because your fire department is volunteer primarily, correct?
Volunteer. I presently represent all the volunteer departments in Washington County, and a part of Kent County. And right now we have probably 12 to 15 other volunteers in Washington County and parts of Kent County. And the only paid department in that whole area would be Narragansett. And we also represent several of the volunteer ambulance corps. And there's been a great group of people working together. And one of the big things is the strong mutual aid system. And there's very few paid people in that whole area. And it's a good example for the state. And right now we are getting hit, the volunteers, harder than the cities and towns by legislation that the Speaker of the House put in 2 years ago prior to becoming Speaker of the House.
Ooh. All right, tell me about that. Well, but before we get to that legislation, you've been a paid chief since 1960 what, right?
1988.
1988. I'm sorry.
Before that, I was volunteer.
All right, so I mean, you were full time in your job from
Right.
'88 on, but you're the only paid personnel.
No, I have one driver mechanic during the daytime.
Okay, how many volunteers in your department?
We average right around 45 to 60. In other words, depending on attrition and.
That's great citizen work, isn't it? The volunteer
Yes, it
fire
is, yeah.
department. Tell me about that.
Well, right now it's a dying breed across the country. When I went in as fire chief in 1964, the state of Rhode Island was about 85% volunteer, and across the country about 85%. Now it's getting down to the point where we're getting closer to 50-50 in Rhode Island. And a lot of that's due to a lot of the laws that's being passed and a lot of the control that's being put on volunteer departments and fire districts after the situation in Coventry.
Yeah.
And I've represented paid and volunteer all throughout my career as president of the New England Division of International Fire Chiefs and president of Rhode Island 3 times and an officer in the International. And right now my primary thing is to try to help the fire districts out in the state, especially the volunteer districts. And we've been working with the Department of Administration through the municipal finance people who have been very cooperative. But right now it's hard to get a piece of legislation changed that was put in by the Speaker of the House.
What was it? What did it do?
It put more restriction onto us, more reporting. Like our fire district covers 2 towns, parts of 2 towns. We're required now in that fire district to make reports to both town councils and their town treasurers and all of that, which is a waste of time because they could care less about them. But it's all coming out of the situation that happened in Coventry.
Well, the Coventry Fire District, where there were 7 districts merged into 4, it's been a financial disaster, no doubt. Those are paid fire departments.
Paid departments, right.
In each of those districts. What is it about what's happening in Coventry that impacts the great volunteer work done in your district and others?
Well, what happens is up in Providence, they don't see the difference. And a lot of these, I think John Simmons did a survey of the Department of Administration several years ago, and I took him on that he didn't give proper information. In other words, he put figures in the newspapers and everything else, but the figures didn't match up to what we were actually doing. In other words, the volunteers, the savings that we're saving the communities down there, and also a lot of our fire districts in that area have low ISO ratings, insurance ratings, so some of the taxpayers aren't paying any more to us than they're saving on their insurance. All that stuff was left out, and I even know with Ken Block. Ken has finally come around now, and I know the last time he testified before the House Finance Committee, he said we got to back off on the volunteer fire districts.
Okay.
And I think right now, I'm hoping that the Speaker of the House next year will work with us. The bill got in this year to try to cut it back a little bit, but it's died in committee.
Well, it's interesting. You know what? Now I'll have you back for another show. I didn't realize that we had this situation going on. When we come back, I want to talk more about what 51 years of service is like. The details of all this fire legislation, that will be another show. Stay with us. You know, if anybody thought that interviewing the 51-year fire chief for Hope Valley in Wyoming would be this kind of, mumbling conversation, obviously not. I mean, now I just walked in a whole bunch of legislative issues that I got to do some homework on. Thanks for the homework, Chief. But I wanted to kind of cover your career if we could. We got some great photos, recent and not so recent, I guess. Let me roll them, Kev. Let's see. Well, first of all, here you are with. Who are those? Those are some of the fire chiefs, along with Representatives Langevin and Cicilline, correct?
Right. I worked with when they first had the first congressional service meetings down in Washington, D.C. 20-some years ago. I started representing the Rhode Island Fire Chiefs and taking groups down. And now our Executive Director, Rick Soucy, is doing most of that, and I've been working with him. And we still go down every year and meet with all of our legislators to go over federal legislation.
Sure.
We get great cooperation from
Serious
them.
business. And here you are with the senators doing same.
Yeah.
What year was that, by the way? Remember?
That was possibly, it might have been it was last year.
Okay,
yeah, it was last
good.
year, yeah.
And then you got this very important moment. This is the new chief, Justin Lee,
That's
correct?
a new chief. He's doing an outstanding job. We had 5 candidates originally for the job, and we ended up with 3 time they took all the written exams and all board exams, and 2 of them were neck and neck, and they were both outstanding young men, as all of our officers are.
So there's the transfer power. And there's some of the fellas.
Yeah, they came up to my house with the trucks to surprise me because they knew that they hadn't been able to surprise me with anything else. So they did surprise me. I heard them going on. I thought they were going on a call, and all the trucks pulled in. And
Oh, that's
I
great.
think it shook the whole neighborhood up.
Oh, my goodness. And this is your home office, is that correct?
That's where it started. Yeah, now it's all, the walls are all covered. I don't know why my wife painted them, but you can't see the blue paint now.
And this is your last day on the job.
Yeah.
With the fellas, and then the last picture is your retirement party, which happened this past weekend at the West Valley Inn. Everything that's anything is happening at the West Valley Inn. There's no doubt about that. What were you thinking during the retirement party?
It was tough, but I made up my mind it was going to be a fun night. I didn't want to get up and get into any emotional situations because I know a lot of my guys were at that state, and so I had to tell a few stories, and I won't relate to the stories, but I told a few stories about what went on with
sure.
the governors over the years, and kind of broke the people up and got everybody relaxed, and more or less I ended up with it. The most important thing you've got to do in the fire service is put the victim or victims first, and the second thing is to have a good sense of humor. If you don't have a sense of humor, you'll never survive in the service.
How many fires do you think you went to over the course of all that time?
Oh, too many over the years, and we've had a tremendous amount of accidents over the years on the interstate highway because we cover one of the biggest sections of the highway. We also run a volunteer hazmat team that covers Washington County and West Greenwich, and we've done that since 1984. We had a volunteer hazmat team, and in 2000, when the state got involved, we became one of the state teams.
So, after all this time, what is the one thing that you take from the entire body of your work?
The rewards. I think the rewards of rescuing an animal for a young child going through the ice, extricating somebody from an automobile accident, saving somebody's home, and being able to do something good for people. I think my whole life has been dedicated to that. And our officers and firefighters in my department and our department have built a department for the needs of the communities, and we've never worried about what the Joneses were doing next door. We've always built our equipment to the needs of the community, and I know the theme last year at the International Fire Chiefs Conference was you don't buy to the wants of the firefighters, you buy to the needs of the firefighters. And I think today this is a good example of what we need to do. We buy to the needs of our community and needs of the firefighters. And I'm hoping that, I know that Justin's going to follow suit. And we have an excellent board of directors. They're similar to a town council. They're business people, and they do an excellent job. And I have a tremendous amount of officers that are well trained and can take over any day. I've gone to Europe for 3 weeks at a time and never worried about leaving town because they could all do a great job.
Well, you know, it's such an honorable occupation, and thankless until you're needed, right?
Yeah.
Appreciate.
And the big thing is too, having a family. The sacrifices my wife, daughter, and son have had to make over the years have been. I never can repay it. It's been tremendous.
Congratulations, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your good work.
Thank you.
One more thing, I'll come back. 51 years. By the way, he may be retired, but he's still going to a conference. Some fire chiefs never quit. See you on the radio tomorrow at noon on WPRO. Good night.